Laura?
First item are adoption of the minutes of the Recreation, Sports and Culture Standing Committee meeting held on Monday, November 29th.
Second. Anybody got any issues with it? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous.
Item 2 is report of General Manager Strategic Initiatives and General Manager Parks, Recreation and Culture Services related to the Centennial School Neighbourhood Learning Centre. The staff recommendation is that Council approve sending a letter of intent to School District Number 43 regarding a Neighbourhood Learning Centre as outlined in the staff report.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Selena?
Thank you. My question
Sorry.
relates to the naming of things, and I'm just looking at the diagram that we have, and we've got the Centennial Pavilion, and then we have the Centennial Activity Center, and I know of some folks who've gotten them mixed up. And so I'm wondering, moving forward, if we can just keep in mind how things get named. And the Activity Center is their name, I'm assuming, School District 43, and Centennial is our name.
Through the chair, I personally don't know the history around these naming, but I will agree that it is confusing. And when we look at the whole precinct, I think there's some rationalization that we can do. I could refer to Joyce Fordyce to see if she's aware of the history of the naming of the Centennial Activity Center. No, we don't have that history here.
But just going forward, if we could just keep that in mind, that I think it creates a lot of confusion in the community.
Absolutely. And as it relates to this specific report, should the school board receive approval to advance a neighborhood learning center, the concept would be that the Centennial Activity Center would be incorporated into that neighborhood learning center with hopefully a new name.
And we won't want to call it the Centennial Neighborhood Center, because it would okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, for receiving the report, all those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous.
Just to clarify, the recommendation is that Council approve sending a letter to...
Oh, sending the letter. Yes.
Item 3 is report of Deputy City Manager and General Manager Parks, Recreation and Culture Services related to 2010 filming update. And this recommendation is that the committee receive the report of the Deputy City Manager and General Manager Parks, Recreation and Culture Services entitled 2010 Filming Update for information.
Move.
A second?
Discussion? Yeah.
Thank you. It's really useful to see, and I recall before I was on council there was a designated individual who was responsible for, I think, all the coordination that came out of economic development. And that was pre-2009 around filming. And I'm just wanting to know if we can get the historical data when that was a sort of a, I'll call it a standalone, I don't know what else to call it. Because we've got 2009, 2010 numbers for revenue, but I'm curious to go back of when that position was first created, and I'd be interested to see sort of what the historical data is when it was a standalone.
Through the chair, certainly staff can provide that historical information around filming activity. The specific designated position that we have currently is actually an administrative function that administers the permits in a coordinated way, but we don't have a senior coordination position for filming. It's just the coordination of administration.
So historic, if I understand then, because it was before my time, so historically there was an individual who did more than that. So there was, my understanding was that there was more active set location identification and a greater relationship or marketing. And I'd be interested in terms of understanding how that's changed, certainly from a revenue perspective. I'd like to see that data so we can, is this really where we want to be, or was that the better model?
Thank you. As Laurie said, we can get the historical revenue information. There is historical permit information in the report, and it doesn't look like there was substantially more permits before 99, but we can dig out those revenue numbers as well. I believe the last person, and I wasn't here for very long while that person was around, but basically served in a coordinator role similar to what is happening now. So I think the model was a little bit different in terms of the person reported through the manager of economic development originally, and now it's reported through Parks, Rec, and Culture. But the model that we have now is a fairly common model in municipalities as well, because where municipalities generate revenue through filming is through the rental of our own facilities typically, and 90% of that typically happens in Parks, Rec, and Culture. So the model in a lot of places is to have the person within that department.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Well, I thought I had the answer, and then it kind of went the other way. So I'm not clear as to whether there is a specific person charged with that coordination, marketing, issuing permits, whatever the role is. Is it a particular person, or is it handled off the side of the desk by somebody as things arise?
Yes, to clarify, we do have a specific person. It is an administrative clerk who administers the permit activity and is dedicated to that task, and does provide the one-stop shop for film companies needing to do filming in the city, and works with all of our different departments. So it is a dedicated task. It is a clerical task, not a coordination management function. It's an administrative function, and they aren't involved in the marketing of filming, but in being efficient in administering those permits and making it simple and a one-stop shop for film productions in the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. Richard?
Thank you. And this has been a long-standing question I've had, because there really are the three functions, I suspect: the administration, the issuance of a permit, the coordination, and the ability to go out and market. And it doesn't matter so much what we call the person, whether we call the person a film coordinator. It matters what their function is. And it doesn't matter so much whether there is one specific person that does this, but rather whether that's one of the jobs that, or perhaps even the only job that they're supposed to do, or whether, in fact, their time will be taken up with lots of other things. Traditionally, and I hate to do this, I'll do 30 seconds. Traditionally, I think we used to charge the person with that position with going out and finding revenue, the direct revenue, the revenue that the chair mentioned, or sorry, that was mentioned here, the revenue for renting civic facilities, whereas most of the municipalities' revenue from film, I would argue the indirect revenue, comes from the film activity in our community. And we don't have anyone that goes out and actually actively pursues that. We have someone who issues permits if you want to film in our community, but no one. And I would like to see council embark on a more proactive, more marketing-based thing, identifying film as being one of the economic development opportunities in our community, and a significant one, a clean one, a high-tech one that could position Coquitlam, now that we're very central to the Lower Mainland, in a very good stead with being a film-friendly neighborhood, being a film-friendly community, and being a community that embraces film and tries to drag it kicking and screaming to Coquitlam. So what do we have to do to get there? We have this administrative position that issues permits, an order taker, if you will. How do we get to be a marketer of film?
Thanks. If I could maybe jump in here, and that's the reason why it's a joint report today from Laurie and myself, because there is an economic development component to this as well. I think that Parks, Rec, and Culture has done a really good job of being film friendly, so making it easy for film companies to do business, but there is sort of a higher level function in terms of how do we do the marketing and how do we attract more business to the community. And there's a couple of things that our manager of economic development is going to work on. One is to liaise with the BC Film Commission around a film-friendly designation, and can they come up with some sort of program where you can get that sort of designation as a film-friendly community. And second, to work with them in terms of, and we do have information on our film locations in Coquitlam on the BC Film Commission website. We've done those types of things, but a little more proactive approach in terms of getting information to them and developing that relationship from a marketing perspective. So when inquiries are made to BC Film Commission, that they think about Coquitlam as a place maybe where to send the business. So we're going to work on those two things going forward, and that was the reason why this was a joint report today.
Well, I thank you for that, because this goes back a number of years. At the provincial level, I was working with the film industry and the television industry, of course, as well as the film commissioner, on trying to identify whether Coquitlam, for example, could become a film-friendly, and the film-friendly term was identifying the barriers that prevent a community from embracing the film industry, or rather prevent the film industry from considering doing business in a particular community. And I would love to see us head down that path of really truly embracing an industry that I think holds a lot of potential for the skill set that Coquitlam and the surrounding neighborhoods can bring to bear, both in employment but also in perhaps even some capital investment in studio facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Nate?
Oh, thank you. I read this with great interest because when we first started venturing down this path, Peter Light took it on, and Peter was sort of our film coordinator, film guru of all things for many years, and then we got I can never remember names, I'm terrible, but the lady that, our next employee that came on and did all kinds of work with us. Mariette. In any event, that worked very well for a while. And then I guess the tax fairy hit the film industry, and that sort of ran the film industry away for a while. But I have to say that I read this with great interest, and some of the paragraphs are repeated in here. I guess you're just trying to tell me something, aren't you? So I thought, wow, I'll read this again. But I think 4 or 5 years ago, we talked about pursuing the film industry. We talked about it last year on our retreat, about doing the film industry. We do lots. We need a salesman to be going out, and we need somebody out there pounding the pavement and doing these things. One of the things about the film industry that we did do, and this is probably going back at least 5 years, is I had been working with some people in Burnaby, and one of the big things for them was that they couldn't live where they stored all their costumes and set designs and the artists and that. And we actually put, if you remember, the work live units down on Schoolhouse. That was our first venture into trying to get people, and Mariette was to be out trying to sell that so that people who were doing costumes and set design and that could come, and they were secure because they could live above where they worked. So we sort of set ourselves up for that, and then it's just fallen by the wayside. And it's too bad because we have some spectacular places here. So I think we have a retreat coming up, and we need to have a serious talk about how we start to bring our stuff to the world. So thank you for your report.
Yeah, thank you. I'm wondering if something like this that can be done by the Chamber of Commerce. They're certainly getting paid from us. We're throwing something like $32,000 a year at them. And I don't know about the other municipalities, but certainly the Chamber of Commerce is a business-oriented operation. And certainly I think that we should find out what are they doing about something like this. They can certainly help us promote something like this. It's business, it's tourism.
Ms. McKay or Mr. Dumont?
We can certainly have that conversation with the Chamber. They do have a role in promoting Coquitlam as well.
Good. Thank you.
Seeing no other comments on this, all in favor of receiving this report? Opposed? Unanimous.
Item 4 is report of General Manager, Parks, Recreation and Culture Services related to provincial changes to special occasion licensed liquor inspector fees. Staff recommendation is that the committee receive the report for information.
Move receipt.
And a seconder? Well, this thing here just absolutely disgusts me, and it's bureaucracy run amok from another provincial agency. So many of these community groups that put on events have such a slim margin to begin with, and to come along and put another huge, significant amount of money on top of a licensing fee just for the off chance that an inspector might show up. It's just too much. And I would like to hear from the rest of this council on if be interested in commenting on this to the Liquor Control Board. Ms. McKay, did you have anything before we start asking all these questions? Did you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just by way of introduction, as staff, we felt it was important for Council to be aware of this. There's very limited time between receipt of the notice of this change and when it's going to become effective, which is January in the new year. And we feel that this could potentially be of significant concern to our many community groups that work very hard to plan events in the city, and some of them do require special occasion licenses. And so we're not aware of any communication effort that has happened out in the broad community or any kind of consultation on this, and we feel that there may be a significant concern expressed by our community groups. And sometimes that concern gets directed to the local level of government, and wanted to be sure that we're doing our job to get the information out there, that we've made no changes as a city here, that but clearly the province is making some changes, and it may have an impact. In terms of implementation, we do expect that if the province does charge these inspection fees, that they will likely be focusing on the large events, not the small, weddings and more private functions, but potentially the large community events. And of course, Coquitlam has a number of those large signature events that do use special occasion licenses, and often for those groups, those liquor operations within their event are an important part of their fundraising that sustains the event or contributes to their ongoing sustainability as an organization. So from staff's perspective, we do think that there will be some groups in Coquitlam that when they go for 2011 to get their special occasion license, they may incur some of these license fees. And we feel there's an opportunity here to make it clear that this is not a city initiative, it's a provincial initiative, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, to my knowledge, I using Coquitlam, and we're not unique. I think we're pretty indicative of other cities too that hold large events. We certainly don't have a lot of issues or problems that I'm aware of with licensing. And I haven't heard of too many with neighbors. So is there any other justification that the province has said that they need to look into this? Are we having issues in Coquitlam? Or are there issues in other cities around that they need to implement this?
Staff are not aware of any unique concerns that the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch has. We have an ongoing role with that branch in terms of advising them that the city gives permission to these groups to have these events on public parkland, and in doing so, we make it clear that we are confident that the groups have the ability to do the event and comply with all of the requirements. The Liquor Control and Licensing Branch obviously has an important role to play to make sure that the rules of their licenses are followed, and I believe their intent is to protect public safety interests here. They have, and we have observed over many years, some minor breaches in licensing, but those have all been managed as far as we're aware between our own staff making operators aware, reminding them of the rules. Our local RCMP, of course, has played an important role also in monitoring, and the liquor control and licensing branch inspectors themselves have been out at events over many years. And so from our perspective, we feel that all of those organizations have done a good job in working with our groups to educate them on what the rules are and ensuring their compliance. And where there have been examples where, there have been some breaches, there have been measures taken to bring everybody back into compliance. So we're not aware of a significant gap in the way things have been operated in the past.
Your knowledge, has LCB ever contacted us with issues on any of, I know there's been some minor ones, there's always little minor problems, but nothing significant that I'm aware of, but have LCB ever contacted the city about issues that maybe we're not in? I'm having difficulty trying to understand why they think that there's a need for this, but however.
I can confirm that, yes, they have contacted city staff in the past, indicating that they are monitoring events very closely.
Oh, monitoring, but not complaints about what's been going on in Coquitlam?
No, we've not received complaints.
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you very much. This really bothers me because this comes out at us without any consultation from the provincial government whatsoever, which I think is just very, very, very disgraceful. Certainly when you go to get a liquor license, you go to the liquor store and get it, and then you have to have it signed by the RCMP. Now, that should be good enough. The RCMP can police the liquor licenses, which they're capable of being able to drop in once a night or whatever it is to wherever the event is and look at it to see whether everything's under control. I think that we need to do more than just say that this is terrible. I think we need to arrange for a meeting with the minister and ask him why. I mean, can you imagine him saying that also we'll pay for the meals of the Liquor Control Board inspector, who may have to be stuck with their accommodation for them, and they may be traveling in mileage. They could be traveling from Kelowna or Victoria or whatever it is. We're the ones that are stuck. And with these new liquor laws, everybody's having one drink and they go home. So they don't have 3 or 4 or 5. So then whoever is selling the liquor is losing money to begin with, and now this is going to be another loss for them because of the new liquor laws. And I'm not saying that I'm open to people getting in there and get themselves plastered or having a dozen drinks or whatever it is. But this really be affected a lot of people by a big way. Not only that, if let's say people want to rent our halls in the city and get a liquor license, it's going to affect them. Yet if they go to one of the hotels that's licensed, there'll be nobody appearing there because they have their own license and they dispense the liquor. So it's very uneven. It's not certainly, it's playing to the hands of one and punishing the other. And those are things that I've got great problems with. So, Mr. Chair, I would, whenever you're ready, I'd like to make a motion that we have an appointment with the minister regarding this issue.
Thanks, I appreciate that. You brought up a good point about private. And, Selena.
Thank you. When I read this, to me it felt like a combination between Big Brother and The Grinch all rolled into one. As a fundraiser, it's a bit alarming that the province is sort of cutting into the cost of putting on events, and you can't do decent fundraising events without having some sort of party atmosphere. In fact, I'm thinking of doing one in February here, and wasn't counting on this in the budget, and now would have to incorporate that in. And I think that's really problematic, especially given that there isn't much timeline. And if it's coming in January, what about those groups that have already established their fundraising events? You're 6 months out, and now they have to readjust their budgets. And it feels very Big Brother in that, we're not trusted with the current strategies to monitor events and to have the RCMP sort of provide the backup. it feels like a whole, what I would call a tax grab is what it feels like. And I would support some action, some sort of commentary from this council to speak out about what the impact this has at the local level, and that encouraging them to rethink this rather than going down this route, at least to consult, which has not been historically what we've seen from this this province. At least consult and find out what the real impacts are going to be before going down this road. So whatever we come up with, I would certainly be willing to support.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, much of everything I would have said has been said. I think Ms. McKay is very generous in suggesting that the Liquor Board's interest is in public safety. I think the Liquor Board's interest is in cost recovery, reducing the amount that they're putting out and getting some back from wherever they can, probably for doing very much what they were doing in the past. And just now getting somebody else to pay an extra fee for it, because certainly I would have expected the license fees would have covered their costs in the past and more than. It's also, I think, the point that an extra $330 for a special occasion license event becomes even more significant when you consider that effectively the Liquor Board regulates the amount of margin you can earn on a drink. So how many more drinks do you have to sell just to cover the license fee? I emailed Lori when I saw this. It just seemed to me that at a minimum we'd want the Liquor Board to take into account the particular situation in this municipality where historically, and it's a long time since I got the license for a soccer dance, but I always saw the Mounties turn up. They always came and checked us up. They, I presume, apply some judgment as to where they go, and I guess my soccer club was one of the less reputable ones, or had a reputation of some sort. But if the Liquor Board would just take that into account, and if our RCMP detachment were prepared to tell the Liquor Board exactly what criteria they apply, so they know that many times we're going, Mounties will be there, there's no need for a liquor inspector, you don't need to incur that extra cost. But I think it's a much broader issue than that, than just solving the problem for Coquitlam. And I agree with the idea that we need to make some representation because of the scope of the issue. It's province-wide. I have no idea how quickly an organization like UBCM can respond, but I think a request to both UBCM and to the Minister that this be delayed pending consultation between the Minister and a committee struck by UBCM to represent the interests of the municipalities and their people in this matter would be appropriate. Thank you.
Thanks. Richard?
Thank you. This one's bugged me for years. I spent 14 years as a city employee, and one of my duties was to enforce the liquor control regulations. Our public policy on liquor is incredibly immature in this province. I don't have a lot of faith in LCLB, and I want to explain a little bit of Ms. McKay said the Liquor Board's interest is in safety. Councillor Nicholson countered that it might be in cost recovery. Well, I think it's actually an expansion. It wants to expand its role in an area of society in a way that it isn't broken. I mean, if it isn't broken, let's fix it until it is. And in this circumstance, I don't see a lot of challenge with this. I didn't see it 20 years ago. One of the problems I do see, though, and Councillor Nicholson mentioned it, you can't charge more than a specific amount for liquor with a special occasion license. I would have thought you'd do the reverse. You can't charge less than. I don't want $2 beer sold at a special occasion license. I wouldn't mind $10 beer because no one's going to drink more than they need. But instead, we end up with the reverse. You can't charge $10 for a beer at a special occasion. Some of the groups actually have to promote more and more beer sales in order to get in order to make the money that they were trying to make, and it's the exact opposite of what you'd think public policy's interest would be. The example I'm going to use, though, is how it affects our community, is Unwrapped. last year. And I use this with hesitation because it did happen last year, not this year, so this isn't a headline. This is the largest fundraiser in Coquitlam's history, the inaugural version of Unwrapped, which is at Coquitlam Centre Mall. Probably 65 charities involved in selling 10,000 tickets to come to an event, the largest fundraiser. 10,000 people come to a fundraiser. You look at the on page 2, the criteria would be the expected number of attendees. Well, that caught their attention. It's 10,000 people. So LCLB sent 2 inspectors that I know of, and they got there and they found an event that barriers were installed around the wine tasting areas. Wine was the only thing that was really being served. It was wine tasting. You could get 2 tickets for a 1-ounce taste of wine, and I mean there was not a lot of risk here. And 10,000 shoppers. A few of them were tasting the wine, but most people were ignoring that part of it. But because someone had led a couple of baby carriages into the mall at one of the entrances, they had to make announcements on the mall's intercom, and eventually they had to shut down the liquor license. The liquor inspectors ordered the RCMP to shut down the largest fundraiser we've ever had in Coquitlam because there were babies and baby carriages over in Please Mom or one of the stores. They were nowhere near the barricaded areas where you could taste wine. The risk was infinitesimal. And 2 liquor inspectors, under this rule, they would have paid, we would have paid travel expenses and time plus overtime or whatever to get them there. The admission to the tasting areas was strictly controlled, and yet the Liquor Control Board, I thought, became a bureaucracy that was completely out of control. And so I would suggest that the letter ought to say, we need to go in the other direction. We need to rationalize some of these regulations to bring us into the 21st century, to make us more like so many other countries around the world that don't have problems with liquor. We are embarrassingly over-controlling of the way in which not-for-profit societies could set up a wine tasting. So my question is there any chance that common sense could be brought to apply to this? I mean, or am I just dreaming? This is... I read this report and I was thinking that clearly someone doesn't understand what's going on out there in the real world and hasn't been to one of these events. This isn't a rave. This is, in a lot of these community events, this Unwrapped was a bunch of yuppie and middle-aged people going shopping on a Tuesday night, and it got shut down by the authorities because one of the babies was crying for a bottle. Wrong bottle. Anyway, I'm done.
Thank you. Nick?
Thank you. Well, I was going to bring up Unwrapped too that year. I mean, I didn't know there were liquor people in attendance there, but they obviously had their little badges and all of a sudden became Matt Dillon and wanted to run around showing off their badges and how important they were. And that's about what I think of this ridiculous, stupid law. If I have a problem with a liquor patron at a function, and I do lots of fundraising too, I'll phone the RCMP. And we're paying the RCMP 90% of their salaries. Thank you very much. The province really isn't getting into doing much of that. I think this is an insult to everyone. So no consultation. They've taken all the steps they can to not give out funds to nonprofits. They've got serving it right certificates was the last thing they did, so everyone has to have one of those, and so all these little fundraisers now, if you don't have the certificate, you can't even have volunteers. Now they take the money from the hard work of all the little volunteers that have to go out and earn extra money to support a lot of social things that really are the province's responsibility in the first place, and they're not doing them. And it's just absolutely stupid. And I think we have to go to the press with this. I'd like to see this go to our local press, the Vancouver Sun, the province, to UBCM, to the LMLGA. And then I'd like everyone in Victoria who's running for the new office, whoever they may be and whichever side they may be on, to send them a letter showing them the height of stupidity and ask them if this is something they would support or wouldn't. Because this really is the height of stupidity. And I'm really, really offended by this. I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have an awful lot more to say. I agree with what everybody around this table has said. This is going to be a huge hardship for our community groups. And I'm a little surprised by it. I mean, Councillor Nicholson and myself attended a small provincial government small business forum, and it was very clear that the government's mandate is to reduce red tape, to reduce bureaucracy, and here we are actually increasing it, making it more difficult for local governments, making it more difficult for community groups. And so I really think that this is incongruent with the direction that the government wants to move in. And so I'll support all of those said things, going to the UBCM, the LMLGA, writing a letter, meeting with the minister, whatever it takes, going to the press. I fully support. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we write a letter to a minister requesting an appointment, not just a letter, but also requesting an appointment, and also, like Councillor Nicholson mentioned, that we go to other people like UBCM and LMGA, and also probably the Metro Board and anybody else that we have to go to get this thing brought to a standstill for a little while until we can have a meeting with this minister. Because I don't think for 1 minute that the ministry even looked at what the downfall of this whole thing may be, or what the hardship it would be on fundraisers and a few other people, that they lose money. They're going to have a bar, but they're going to lose money on a bar, not even break even. So I'll make that motion. And I'd hope that we'd set up a meeting with the minister immediately, as soon as possible.
Okay, and it's been seconded by Councillor Robinson. Yeah.
I had a slightly different approach in mind. And I want to point out that with all of us, culminating with May and Linda, we keep broadening where we should go with this, and I think all that broadening is entirely appropriate. I think it's important that we deal with this quickly.
Yeah.
We meet tonight as council. I know it will be challenging for staff, but rather than acting on Councillor Sikora's motion, which he has made as broad as he can think of in trying to deal with everything we've heard from everybody, but I don't think it's as broad as it can go. And I would like to see this report come back to council tonight with a recommendation from staff as to a communications plan, specifically who gets approached and what we're asking them to do. And I think they can do that based on what they've heard here at this table today.
Mr. Dumont, what do you think about that?
Yes, we can, through the chair, we can do that for this evening.
Thank you.
That's my suggestion, and I think Celine is trying to speak to you.
Well, further to that, just I mean, we could certainly send letters out and ask for a rethink on this, but I think it would be wonderful if the community groups that we're advocating on behalf of could also be informed about this coming down and encourage them to write letters and make their own appeals on their own behalf, and would like to see that included somehow. I suspect that we have a distribution email, some sort of system where we can let others know, because I don't know that many community groups would even know this, and would like to provide them with the opportunity and perhaps some direction about what they can do in order to act on their own behalf.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to see this motion passed, and then we can, certainly the staff, if they have anything else to add for tonight's meeting, they can. I have no difficulty with it, but I think we need to pass this motion. I mean, I don't think that for 1 minute we should leave this motion alone and have somebody come up with something different for tonight. I'm sure that every council member would support this motion. I don't think there'd be any problem at all. And if the staff thinks that there might be a slight little thing that we should add on, so tell us tonight and we'll be able to add it on. But I think it's pretty broad. I don't know how much broader I can put it, because I've named every level of government. So, there's nothing more that I can say. Okay?
Thank you, Lou. Richard?
We don't need to be broader. I think at this point we need to be really focused on what we're trying to do. We're trying to one department and one minister to realize that the bureaucracy is out of control related to liquor licensing. And I think that to the extent that the meeting will achieve that, a letter that could pointedly make those comments and be copied to other partners so that they can also carry the same song. These things, all of our efforts have to be focused on trying to make them understand that this is wrong, and that means bringing other partners involved. Let's not go out to the federal government and all those sorts of things, because that does tend to muddy the waters. There's only one department of government that's responsible for this, and one department of government that will change it in the end. So.
Doug? Well, I agree with you, Richard, but I also disagree. I think that every person in Victoria right now, here we are, this beautiful province, the best place in Canada to live is British Columbia, and we don't have leaders anywhere. Everybody's leaving the leadership position in the province. And right now, this is a perfect example. This is a perfect example of how government bureaucracy and stupidity makes the people of this province so annoyed. And I just think we need to let all of those people running, have they got it within them to change the system? Have they got it to stop some of the silly stuff that's going on over there and move forward and be the proud province we are? So we may just have to change one minister's mind, but I think we have to let all those folks that have got their names out and are ready to take on the leadership of this province, they have to see what it is that just frustrates the general populace. Thank you.
Ms. Lohr, could you read back the motion?
The motion that I have is that Council write a letter to the Minister, obviously it needs to be wordsmithed a little bit, requesting an appointment, and that a copy of the letter be forwarded to the UBCM LMLGA, Metro Vancouver, and if Selena was amending the motion to include nonprofits as well.
So I'll make amendment.
Second.
Will the letter express your displeasure, Mr. Chair?
Pardon?
Is the letter just going to ask for an appointment, or is it going to express our
To say
displeasure?
why and also an appointment.
What I wanted to make sure of, instead of sending a letter up asking for an appointment.
Well, the displeasure in this has got to be first and foremost. Is there anything else that...
Mr. Chair, if I can also add that because tonight's council meeting is the last meeting prior to the Christmas break, the recommendation might also include referral to tonight's council meeting as an onward transmittal item. The minutes won't be ready for tonight's meeting, but perhaps we could prepare a short covering page to go with the report.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I was hoping that it would come to council tonight so the rest of the council members can see what we're doing. And, they maybe we have two councillors that are missing here. Maybe they can add something onto it or whatever it is. But I think that it's very, very important that we drive it home, because this is a very serious situation. For instance, just at our local Legion, they rent the hall out, and a lot of people bring their own liquor. In this case, it's like a corkage of $3.50 a head, or let's say they have 75 people, it's going to be like $4 a head, or more than that, $5 a head for a corkage. That's what a silent partner in a corkage business. That's what it is. And it's amazing how many. It'll certainly affect your different departments in the city too, and many other halls that are around the community, and that's frightening what's happening.
Okay. So on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Now on receipt of the report. Has that been...
It was moved and seconded.
Okay. All those in favor of receipt? Opposed? Unanimous.
Item 5 is report of General Manager, Parks, Recreation and Cultural Services, 50-plus Pavilion membership trial program. Staff recommendation is that the committee receive the report for information.
Move receipt.
Second.
Ms. McKay?
Sorry, we were just doing some logistics there on the transmittal. This is with respect to the trial program for the 50-plus membership. We've been in consultation with our advisory committees, and this particular trial kind of fits in with a number of initiatives that are going on right now at City Hall. We have the outdated rules work that's happening, where we're actively looking for ways that we can make practical decisions that improve services and make things simpler and more efficient for our citizens. And this is a prime example. We have our 50-plus membership programs at our 2 pavilions, and in the past, those memberships have been on a calendar year basis. So January the 1st, people get their membership, and it's good till the end of the year. And it provided for a discounted rate if you bought your membership around September or so of the year. Well, of course, now we've got many more people that are 50 plus, and they might decide in April that they want to buy a membership, or they might decide in November that they want to buy a membership, and they don't understand why it's on a calendar year. And even though the membership fee is only $15, people are watching their pennies, and they want to make sure they're getting the best value. So the proposal here for this trial program is that when people buy a membership, if they buy it today on December the 13th, it's good until December the 12th of next year. So it's good for a full year, whatever day you happen to purchase it. And that means that they get the full value of every day of the year that they buy that membership. It's easier for the city to administer, because you don't have 4,000 members coming and lining up on January 1st to do their renewals. We can do the renewals throughout the year as they mature. It's much easier for the members themselves. They don't have to stand up in lines because of this kind of membership program. First of all, they could come and do it any time they're at the counter without having to stand in line, but we'll even be able to offer them the option of doing it online, and so they don't have to waste their time standing in the line at all. So the advisory committees are fully in support of this. Because our membership programs are tied up into the fees and charges bylaw, council only deals with the fees and charges bylaw once a year at budget time. In the budget, it already has the old program, which was the calendar year program, and that's what's approved and what you'll be finalizing through the budget deliberations. So we don't want to have to wait all the way till next year to do something like this. So we are going to be doing it as a trial program for this year, making it effective immediately, and we'll be evaluating it so that in time for next year's budget deliberations, we'll know whether we want to recommend that you approve this as part of the new fees and charges bylaw for 2012. That concludes my introductory comments.
Thank you very much. You're making some good suggestions there. The one thing I'd like to ask, that I notice in here, that they pay in September, they pay half price. Well, maybe that's exactly the problem that we're having. See, I'm sure they're aware that it expires on December 31st, but they'll buy it, just to pay the $7. So, I think what you're suggesting is a good idea, that it'll be $14 and it'll be good for 1 year. I think it's a good thing, because I think what's happening here, that they're bypassing that $14 payment for a $7 payment, which is, sometimes hard to budget and to do a lot of other things. So I'd support that motion. I think it's great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's only 9%.
Would this take effect on new memberships? Or, for example, I'm a member. My membership now will expire on December 31st. It may be that in January and February I'm busy with a whole lot of things, and I finally decide to go to the St. Patrick's Day event at Dogwood Pavilion, and when I go to register, they say, oh, your membership's expired. If I renew on the 12th of March, is my renewal date Jan 1 or March 12?
March 12th.
The renewal date would be the March date, and it would go for a full year from that date. So there would be a period in that example of January and February where you would not hold a membership. But you could reactivate your membership at the time that's convenient for you, and it would be good for a full year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I too, I think it's a great deal. I think it's a great initiative, and thank you for bringing this forward. Seeing no other conversation on this, all those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous.
Item 6 are minutes of the Cultural Advisory Committee meeting held Tuesday, November 16th, 2010. The recommendation is that the committee receive those minutes.
Move receipt.
Second.
Any comment? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous.
There's a recommendation arising from those minutes in relation to the committee's name. The recommendation is that the name of the committee be changed to Arts and Culture Advisory Committee.
Before we vote on this, I would like what Neil thinks about if we, relatively easy, if we put this forward to Onward Transmittal tonight, so it's
Absolutely.
done, and then
Done in time for the next meeting.
time for the next meeting.
Thank you. So we could add that to the recommendation for onward transmittal. Moved.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous.
That concludes the items on the formal agenda.
Move adjournment.
Is there anything for around the table? Nothing? Motion to adjourn? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you.
Considering we started